We are live at two museums in the auditorium right next to the Civil Rights Museum, downtown Jackson. We're here for Empower Mississippi's Unleash Mississippi event, and joining us now in the Element Well studios, Forrest Thigpen, Senior Advisor with Empower Mississippi. Forrest, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you. Appreciate the walk-up music.
Yes, sir. That was good, wasn't it?
Back from my generation.
All right, we got everything all set up here, and it looks like there's a stage with 4 chairs on it. We're going to have panel discussions and lots of members of our legislature, our statewide leaders in here today. Second event like this, the second Unleash Mississippi event, I should say, for Empower Mississippi. It was a big hit last year. I was here. It looks like it's going to be even bigger and better this year.
Yeah, and I was here last year, too. Wasn't part of Empower until about 6 weeks ago. But
yep.
It was a terrific event then. And actually, I think the lineups for this one are even better.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about, the governor's going to talk about jobs. And he's going to do that with Grant Callen of Empower. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to talk about education. And not just generally, but about the importance of innovation, the importance of local control for allowing teachers to teach instead of having so much imposed on them. And then we'll have a session on criminal justice. A lot of times people, when we talk about people having second chances after prison, then people, conservatives sometimes think, well, you're just being soft on crime. And so we're going to talk about why that's a mistaken notion, among other things with criminal justice. And then we will have a panel on poverty that Russ Latino will help with, and we've got a couple of terrific guests on that. And again, just like with the other panels, part of our goal here is to help people maybe get over some of their preconceived notions of what they think on these issues.
Yeah.
People that tend to slide into the either-or, and just like Elise said a few minutes ago, it's really, we need to take a both-and. We need to look at all the options and not just slide into the political arguments. And really, that's one of the reasons that I came to Empower, and that's why I'm happy to be here, is because that is the approach we take, is not taking, sliding into political lanes, but sticking to policy and figuring out how to come together not as a compromise of principles, but as reasonable people coming together and actually discovering, oh, you actually have a good idea that I hadn't thought about. So, and then we close out with the Speaker of the House and Briggs Hobson talking about the legislative session.
It seems like, to your point, Forrest, that there is more of a willingness, more folks are more eager in the legislature, I feel like, to work together and coalesce around common ideas.
Yeah, some are, when especially with the Republicans having a supermajority. There again, you can conflate Republican and conservative, and so. Again, that's why I like what we're doing here is today we're going to have a good cross-section of people across the political spectrum because we have approached these issues with a cooperative spirit. And so whether that's other organizations or whether it's legislators, I do think there is a desire among the public and I hope a growing desire among legislators to work together more than they have in the past.
So we got Sheriff Brian Bailey coming on with you in the next segment as well. When you look at Empower as an organization in the 3 focus areas, one of those is criminal justice reform, and Sheriff Bailey's been incredibly innovative in Rankin County.
He has.
And doing some things that don't just lock up criminals that do wrong stuff and break laws and then send them out after they've served their time, but reinstate them into society so that they are productive citizens. This is a major focus area for Empower as well.
It is, and if you think about it, even logically, you think about the fact that 95% of people who are in prison are going to get out.
Yeah.
And actually 100% of the people who are in local jails
that's right,
will get out. And the statistics show that it's within the first 3 months of their being out that they are most likely to commit a crime that might send them back to prison, which further increases the cost and the congestion and all that. And the reason for that, or a major reason for that, is because they come out of prison with no addiction treatment, no skills. And so all they know to do is go back to what they were doing before that led them to prison to begin with. So we have to look at it logically. It's not just an emotional thing. It's not just a lock them up and throw away the key or open up the doors and let them all out. There are rational ways to deal with this.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that more in the next segment. But first, we've got SuperTalk News, Fox News coming your way. Forrest, Mississippi, we are back with you. We're down at 2 museums today for Empower Mississippi's Unleash Mississippi event. Joining us now, the president of Empower Mississippi, our good friend Russ Latino. Russ, looks like you guys are all set up, getting ready for a big event today.
It's going to be an awesome event. We're super excited about it. Last year was our inaugural Unleash Mississippi. Great panels, great discussion. Had a lot of folks who have become engaged with Empower coming out of it. Really, the vision for this thing is to have people who care about their communities, who care about the state of Mississippi, seeing it advance, seeing it rise, come together and have a real discussion around the biggest issues facing the state and then how we tackle those issues with good solutions, bridge building across the political spectrum. And so we're super excited. Last year was a great event. This year it's going to be, candidly, much larger. We've had a tremendous sort of response to putting together the event in terms of people who want to be here today, and we've got some great panels lined up. I know that you talked with Forrest earlier, but we've got a great education panel around innovation that's combining, a public school superintendent, someone who started a private school, and then business leaders like Scott Waller is going to be on that panel, which is excellent. And then we've got, a great panel around criminal justice reform. You just talked to Brian Bailey and Forrest, but we also have Alicia Judkins with Forward.us joining us. We've got Right on Crime, which is a good conservative organization that thinks about criminal justice reform. Scott Payton joining us on that. And then the last panel is a panel really focused around how do we address poverty in Mississippi, and that's one that I'll be moderating. And on top of it, we got some great leaders joining us. So Governor Reeves will be here. We'll be joining you on air before the program begins. We're excited to have him. And then at the end of the program, Speaker Philip Gunn and Senator Briggs Hobson will join us to kind of do a review of what happened this session. So a lot of what we talk about today, Gerard, is going to be forward-looking. It's going to be focused around how do we tackle those things that haven't been tackled yet. But it's important to also look back and recognize that this legislature and this set of leaders is making a difference in Mississippi, and we want to be able to celebrate that.
Yeah, I think we had some good legislative accomplishments in the 2022 session as well. I know you were, and the organization was heavily involved in the tax reform legislation that ultimately did make it to the governor's desk and was enacted. It stopped short of total elimination of the income tax, which was the original objective and the original goal. But the way the sausage is made, I think it came out with a pretty good bill. I've described it on the program as a down payment on what I foresee as being the full elimination of the income tax. I think that's still on the radar. I know the Speaker certainly seeks to do that. So does the governor. I think the lieutenant governor is not quite there yet, is safe to say. But that was a big deal.
A huge, huge deal. Obviously, income tax elimination was the bigger goal.
Yeah.
And it remains the goal. You're right. The governor has made it very clear that he is seeing this as a first step. The Speaker has made it very clear that he views it as a first step. But when you sit back and look at the actual reform, Gerard, it's one of the best that's happened in the country for several years running. We end up with 1 of 10 flat income taxes in the entire country. We have the largest tax exemption in the entire country amongst states that collect income taxes, which is huge, particularly when you think about working class citizens or lower income citizens getting that break where they're not really paying very much in state income taxes. And then the end result is that we end up with a 4% flat tax, which would be one of the lowest rates in the entire country. So it is an excellent down payment, and I like the way you said that, on moving towards becoming the 10th state that doesn't have any income tax. A big, big accomplishment, and we were proud to play a small part in that, helping to propose the idea of kind of moving towards a 4% flat tax and working with legislative leadership throughout the process over the last 2.5 years. But I look at that as again, a first step, and there's a lot more work to be done.
Yeah, agree. So one of the statistics that I talk about a lot on the program, the data points that I track and feel very strongly as a key indicator of the standard of living in our state, really two, is household income and per capita income. And unfortunately, we've been at the bottom of the heap among the 50 states since that data has been published and collected. 1929, I think, is when it started. I've often felt, Russ, that we just need to put these giant scoreboards and down at the legislature and the chambers that display what that is and what our rank is, so that they're constantly focused on your goal here is to implement policy to a great extent that helps us get that off the bottom. And I know that you guys have got a panel discussion, as you just talked about, that you're going to moderate, going to narrate about poverty today. This is an issue in Mississippi that we all should be focused on.
No doubt. I mean, the two metrics that we look at are the per capita income that you mentioned, and then the workforce participation rate, which is different than unemployment, right? It's literally the percentage of your population over the age of 16 that is working. And we have historically not only had the lowest income levels in the country, but historically are one or two at the bottom on workforce participation rates. So a big part of breaking generational cycles of poverty is having economic opportunity available to people. It's having people educated and trained in a way that they can seize those economic opportunities when they are presented. And so this is a complex problem. You know, we look at the war on poverty as an example, Gerard. Lyndon Johnson declared a war on poverty back in the 1960s, and he said then that this will only be successful if we actually help to eradicate poverty, not to make it more comfortable. And the reality is we spent over $30 trillion on poverty-related programs as a country, and we see a poverty rate that is basically the same as what Lyndon Johnson had when he started the war on poverty. So, you know, it's time to rethink the sort of progressive approach. But it's also time to rethink the conservative approach, because I think oftentimes conservatives limit their ability to reach people by looking at a population and painting with a unflattering broad brush that says people who are in poverty are there because of some choice that they've made or some series of choices. And oftentimes there are real impediments that prevent people from getting the education or getting the sort of training they need to be successful or getting jobs to be successful. And so it's a complex problem, but I think we've got to destroy narratives that say, well, everybody just needs to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, because that's clearly, if that was that simple, then we'd be there. Or the narrative that says, hey, we just need to spend more and more money trying to make people comfortable in poverty. What we've got to do is look at it and say, how do we treat people as contributors? How do we stop treating people as dependents and treat them as contributors? And so we're super excited. Randy Hicks is coming over from Georgia. He's been doing a lot of good work in Georgia around a conservative approach to poverty, looking at things like welfare cliffs and some of the sort of institutional policy problems that prevent people from climbing the economic ladder. And then we've got Diane Payne, who for 2 decades ran a program on the Mississippi Gulf Coast trying to teach self-sufficiency, trying to help people get out of poverty. And so she'll have a unique Mississippi perspective. I am very excited about this panel because I think it presents a unique opportunity for us to start a good conversation. I
know, as wearing your Empower President hat, that you deal a lot, you connect a lot with members of our legislature as well as our statewide leaders. Are they receptive, or are they starting to show a strong interest in what I think it should be the top of the list, which is improving our standard of living and improving our workforce participation and getting off the bottom of per capita and household income?
Yeah, I think there are some people that are absolutely animated by that. Now, when you just talk about workforce participation rates, right, eyes glaze over, people start to drool because it feels boring. But when you're talking about it actually empowering people to go out and take care of themselves, that's a different story. And I do think that you've got Lieutenant Governor Hoseman's talked a lot about wanting to raise the workforce participation rate.
He does.
As a priority. I think that's an excellent priority. Part of this, from a leadership perspective, and I think we've got a good crop of leaders that are painting a vision, but part of it is painting that big picture vision and not thinking about it on a session-by-session basis, where we look at the session and say, what are the incremental changes we want to make this session, versus saying, hey, we want to, raise our workforce participation rate by 5%, and then let's rally solutions around that vision. I think somebody sort of leading that clarion call has an opportunity to really change the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, I agree with you, first of all, but it just feels like, and I think it kind of starts with a governor that made it very clear on the campaign trail. I'm going to ask him about this when he comes on. He says he not only wants to make Mississippi a great place to do business, he wants to make it the best place to do business. I think that is still an area of focus and a goal he has. Empower the organization, work close with the governor's office, work close with the members of the legislature to help figure out the policies to achieve that goal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a huge part of our business, if you will, and we think of it like a business. We're a nonprofit, but very much so we've got to be creating value, or else we shouldn't exist. Right. And so, if you think about sort of our core business, a lot of it is about developing big ideas, so coming up with solutions and pulling in stakeholders and other partners to develop solutions. That's the start. But it's got to be the right idea with the right message, the right messenger delivered to the right people. And that's how you get outcomes, good outcomes. And so
we'll take a break right here. We'll come right back. We got more to talk about with Russ Latino, the president of Empower Mississippi. We're at Empower Mississippi's Unleash Mississippi in downtown with a lovely day. And it is a lovely day. We're down at 2 museums in downtown Jackson for Empower Mississippi's Unleash Mississippi event. And on the Element Wealth set here, we've got Russ Latino. He is the president of Empower Mississippi. So, Russ, it sounds like we're going to have a great day. So you talked about the panel discussion that you will be leading, and then the other panel discussion, I think, related to criminal justice reform. You've got a great lineup there. What else we got going on from a panel discussion perspective?
Yeah, so we've got an education panel that includes Lee Childress, who's the superintendent of Corinth Public Schools. Was on with you earlier. Lee is a phenomenal leader, very innovative thinker, really thinks outside the box, and so we're excited to partner with him. Scott Waller will be a part of that panel from Mississippi Economic Council, and really looking at it from the vantage point of the importance of education to businesses, because the people who come out of our education system ultimately are the people that go to work for the businesses in Mississippi and determine how productive and successful those businesses will be. And then some people are going to come out of our education system, and they're going to be the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. And we want to be building those people too. So great panels on education, poverty, and criminal justice. That criminal justice panel is unique because we're really focused on the uptick in crime and how you have public safety and simultaneously have really smart criminal justice reform that gives people a path forward, a path toward redemption. And then we've got the governor, we've got Speaker Gunn, we've got Senator Briggs-Hobson. We're giving out RISE Awards, which is something we started last year. These are people that are making a big contribution to the state of Mississippi. So we're excited about all of this. We've got 300 people signed up to attend today. So we're hoping folks will come out and enjoy the conversation and really come away with it with a sense of what they can do to be more active in moving the state forward. Doors are going to open at 12:30, so they'll get to see your interview with Governor Reeves before we get kicked off at 1. And are just expecting a great event today. Yeah,
and we should also point out that this museum that we are adjacent to is magnificent.
It is magnificent. This is the third event that I've done here, larger event. It is a phenomenal venue for events, but more so, if you want to get in touch with Mississippi history, if you want to understand some of the plight that African-American citizens in Mississippi went through and some of the struggle that has come after that, this is a great place to come and get in touch with our history and kind of understand our people. One of the other things that I'd say that one of the reasons we picked this venue is because our goal is to bring people together of different viewpoints, right? We're decidedly conservative in the way that we think about things.
Sure.
But we also recognize that this sort of current environment where we foam at the mouth at each other and treat each other as the enemy isn't one that yields solutions.
Yeah.
And so we really are trying to figure out how do you bring different voices together, figure out where that common ground is, and then build on that common ground. I think it takes vision. I think it takes a lot of hard work. But we're excited to be a platform for some of those conversations.
Yeah, and the fact that the event is increased in size and scope this particular year, I think, is a testament to the success of the inaugural event last year. I think we're seeing that more legislators and more state leaders want to hear from Empower, want to hear the ideas that Empower has and see how that can be fitted into and influence public policy.
Yeah, we want to keep working really closely with our legislative leadership and with the members of the legislature to accomplish things together. And so we've got a good group that are coming today, both Republican and Democrat, and we're excited about that. We've got a great group of just community leaders from across the state that are coming today. If you look at who's registered to be here, it's not just number. It's a really great sort of quality audience of people, from elected leaders to people who are serving in government in different capacities to community leaders, and on down the line. A lot of media will be here today. So we're just excited about the scope of the program. And then I think a lot of the other audience members who maybe don't fall into those categories are people who are looking for ways to be more engaged, who really want to be a part of not just complaining about problems in Mississippi, but solving problems in Mississippi. And that's what Empower wants to be a platform to do.
Well, and I think it's fair to say when we have an assembly like this, there's a lot of brain power present, and what we want to do is convey ideas and exchange ideas and talk about those and put those together to devise solutions. That's really what the public policy making sausage process is all about.
It is. And, you know, I think for a lot of years, groups had taken the approach that said, we're going to come up with our own package of solutions and push them. And certainly there is a role for developing policy that think tanks like Empower does. But more so, it's recognizing that the best solutions come when you work with other people.
Yeah.
When you understand the problems, because you've talked to enough people, you've brought in enough stakeholders, and then you can achieve something worth achieving. That's what happened with the tax reform, but I think it's also what's happened with parole reform and lots of other things that Empower has been a part of. We're proud of that. We're proud to host an event like this today. I think it's going to be a great day.
Yeah, congratulations. I do, too. It is setting up to be just a fantastic Unleash Mississippi event. We're down at 2 museums today. We're going to take a break for SuperTalk News and Fox News. When we come back, Grant Callen, the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi, and his museums. We're actually in the auditorium between the 2 museums adjacent to the Civil Rights Museum. We're down here because it is Empower Mississippi's second Unleash Mississippi event. Last year was the inaugural event at this same venue. This would be event number 2, and as Russ Latino, the president of Empower Mississippi, just informed us, this year's event promises to be even bigger with greater attendance and more sessions and so forth. So looking forward to that. And joining us now, the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi, Grant Callen. Grant, you got to like what you see here, man. It's going pretty good.
We're getting excited. We're getting real excited. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
It's been good to have you here all morning, and we're putting the final touches on the program and getting the lighting right, and it's going to be exciting. As you said, this is our second event like this, and last year's was just such a cross section of Mississippi coming together to both celebrate what is working, what is thriving, what is flourishing about Mississippi, and take a hard look at our challenges and say, what can we do to make sure we create more opportunity for more people? And we're going to do more of the same this year. And we got a great lineup of speakers. We have got the governor, who is going to kick things off at the beginning. And, you know, we're talking really about work, which is so fundamental to quality of life.
Sure.
And in many ways, Mississippi is ahead of a lot of our states that during COVID shuttered businesses and had extended lockdowns. And, you know, our governor fought to make sure that people, not only that we protected lives, but we protected livelihoods.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what we're going to be talking about.
Well, I know you founded the organization in 2014. It has been my honor to serve as the board chair since then. Full disclosure, we always do that when we have you on. But you know, as a member of the board, I have watched the organization scale and grow and become more relevant in public policy making. Clearly, this event, I think, is a reflection of that today with the attendance. with the governor, other statewide leaders, members of the legislature, other folks interested in public policy, all in attendance today. They want to hear what Empower has to say. You got to be proud of that.
Look, I am just deeply honored and humbled that lawmakers and governor, speaker, and just movers and shakers and ordinary Mississippians would want to come to this, and they do, and work with us around the year. Growing up in Laurel, I just thought Mississippi was the best place on the planet, and I knew I wanted to do something to just make it even better. And I tell the story. I've lived my whole life here, spent about 6 months outside the state working in D.C., and it was a shock to me to discover that people across the country thought Mississippi was, backwards and obese and poor and dumb and ignorant. And I thought, well, they just don't know what they're talking about. And I think the vast majority of these folks across the country who think about Mississippi don't know what they're talking about. They don't know our culture and our music and the amazing heritage that we have here. But that's not to say we don't have challenges. And I talk about it all the time. When I look at the data, it looks to me like about 1/3 of Mississippians are doing really well.
Yeah.
And 2/3 are struggling. And it doesn't always break down just like that, but 1/3 of Mississippians have some college, 2/3 have none. 1/3 of Mississippians make less than 50 or make more than 50,000, 2/3 make less. These are indicators of quality of life, and you can't travel this state without bumping into people who lack opportunity and are not flourishing as much as we know they could. And so this work, this mission, this work year-round, and certainly this event is about tearing down opportunities so that the citizens of Mississippi can climb and soar as high as their God-given talents will take them. And we got a talented people.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think that Empower's inception and Empower's coming onto the scene and being a force in public policy making was really needed. It just seems like there was a bit of a void there. It's not to say there aren't also great policy advocacy organizations that exist in the state of Mississippi, but policy is broad and it's deep. And it's honestly, it's hard to address all the policy areas. But the organization started out with a focus on education and education choice. And since then, it has expanded its focus areas to criminal justice reform and most recently to the category we call work, which really just deals with the kind of the broad spectrum of economic issues and the standard of living in the state of Mississippi. And you've built a fantastic team to be involved in all those policy focus areas. Talk about the team a little bit.
Well, it's amazing to be able to have people on the team that are more talented than I am, that have expertise in areas that I don't have, that bring vision and ideas. Look, my colleague Russ Latino, this whole event was his idea.
Yeah. And
we're 2 years in, and it's been a great success. So, yes, having a great team matters immensely. And then being focused, though. A lot of times it's tempting when you see lots of shiny objects, lots of needs in our state to want to try and solve them all. Yeah. And one of our distinctives is we've said we're going to remain focused. We have 3 areas. We don't have 10. There are a lot of other important things that we could address that we've chosen to narrow in on education, work, and justice, because these are kitchen table issues for moms and dads and entrepreneurs around the state who these are the issues that affect quality of life. And it's, I have 5 kids, and I describe it kind of our mission the way it's what I want for my kids. I want them to get a world-class education so that they can find meaningful work right here in Mississippi if they want it, and they stay out of the justice system.
Yeah.
And if, God forbid, one of my kids makes a mistake and they end up behind bars, we've got to have a pathway to a second chance.
Yeah.
And, part of this is working with lawmakers. And I love that we do have lawmakers in Mississippi that get it, that see that there's a lot to celebrate, there's also a lot to work on, and we can come alongside and hopefully provide a vision for change that supports what lawmakers are already doing.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say, Grant, that in the early days, the lawmakers sort of viewed the organization as maybe a bit of a threat. But now they view it as a valuable resource. And I think that's how things have kind of changed and evolved through that period of time, because they've seen that the policies make sense, that Mississippians also support the policies. And when you're in politics and your job, and you're a political leader, and your job is to support the people, and you start tuning into the people, and they say, yeah, we want these policies, which Empower is advocating for. They get on board and they say, hey, what else you got going on there? So, I mean, it's a simple explanation, but that's in general what's happened.
It is, and I think some of that is we've evolved. We have changed the way we approach policymaking in order to be more effective. And, you know, one of the things that we have learned, and it's just a hallmark of our work today, is that relationships matter.
Yeah.
And we want to work with anybody in the state who shares our goals for lifting people, helping people rise, creating opportunity, tearing down barriers. I'm a conservative. I'm free market. I believe in those things, and I believe that's a path to how we accomplish policy. But if you are not a conservative, but you want to see kids get a better education, or you want more people working, or you believe in second chances, we want to work with you regardless of whether our politics jives.
Yeah.
And so we have just seen that there's all kinds of people that need to be at the table, and we can work with anybody.
Yeah. And we should point out, regardless of your political views, but your political party affiliation as well.
That's right.
That we're looking to work with everybody who shares the vision and who is on board with the same policy ideas. And that's the way we get good policy enacted, I think, in the state of Mississippi. And we should also point out we got the governor coming on. To a great extent, he's fully on board with the policy positions of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we can talk about policy all the time, but I don't get a vote,
right?
And I don't get the governor's pen to sign legislation. And so, yeah, I think we're super excited about working alongside these state leaders that share our values. And you know, one of the awards we're giving today is a Rise Award to the governor for his long-standing leadership on working to eliminate the income tax.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal, as Russ Latino pointed out. Grant, it is a pleasure to be here, and appreciate you coming on Middays, and looking forward to talking to the governor next, and looking forward to the event right after the show here. We're down at 2 museums for Empower Mississippi's Unleash Mississippi event. Once again, stand by. We've got Governor Tate Reeves joining us next.
Thanks.